Hello, welcome back to Fighting Game Basics. Today we're going to start our first multi-part episode because we're going to start talking about frame data. Now, frame data seems very complex and into the weeds on some things, but we can actually break it down, make it very simple, easy to wrap our head around, and help you really understand the mathematics and the logistics of what's happening in a fighting game. The reason this is going to be multi-part is because every single thing we talk about in fighting games is going to be discussed in the context of how many frames that move occurs for. So in order to make this stay true to the short, easy to reference spirit of the series, part 1 is going to just look at the basics of what frame data is telling us. Part 2 is going to look at what happens when our attack hits the opponent. How do we utilize the information the frame data gave us to capitalize on that situation. And part 3 is going to look at how do we do that same thing, but when the opponent blocks the attack that we used. So to start with, what is a frame? All fighting games run at a set 60 frames per second. That is to say, one frame is equal to 1/60th of a second. That's our basic unit of measurement for everything we discuss in fighting games. Now when I press a button, I get all this information down here. All these numbers, all these colors. So let's break down what this is telling us. Every attack that we use is going to go through 3 phases. There is the startup phase, the active phase, and the recovery phase. Startup is represented by these green rectangles. Active is represented by the pink rectangles, and recovery is represented by the blue rectangles. The startup phase is how much delay there is between me pressing the button and the attack actually being able to hit the opponent. So in this case, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 startup frames. So this is a 5-frame window between when I hit the button before my attack will actually hit the opponent. So they have 5 frames to hit me here, and they can interrupt my attack because my attack has not become active and able to hit them yet. So, smaller the startup, the less window you have to be interrupted. Your active frames is the window that you have when you hit the button for it to actually make contact with the opponent. So in Cammy's case, she goes through 5 startup frames where she can be counter hit or interrupted, and then frames 6, 7, 8, and 9, or 4 frames after frame 5, is the window where her punch will actually make contact with the opponent. Once this active period ends, we go into recovery. This is how long I'm still committed to the attack, even though it won't be able to damage the opponent anymore. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to hit her her standing medium punch, and I'm immediately going to go into down back. And what we're going to look for is the delay between the animation for the punch and her going into the animation for the crouch. Alright, now watch the input display compared to that animation. You see how I'm at down back noticeably before she actually goes to the down back animation? That's the window that I'm vulnerable. I'm still committed to this attack that I threw out, and the opponent can just hit me, guaranteed during that time. I can't block, I can't hit back, I can't dash, jump, super, anything. I am committed to this attack that I threw out. This is the entire basis of how fighting games function. Every action commits you to that action for a certain amount of time. Some actions commit you for longer than others. Standing medium punch has 13 frames recovery and only takes 22 total frames from the startup to the very end. There's 22 frames that this button goes through its entire startup active recovery. But something like crouching heavy kick has 24 frames of recovery, and I'm committed to it for a total of 35 frames. That's over half a second from the point I hit this button, I have no other options for over half of a second. I'm just committed to this. And to demonstrate this, I'm going to hold up as soon as I hit the button. So this time we're going to look for the delay between the animation from here and Cammy being able to jump. That's going to show us the gap that we are just committed and vulnerable to this. That's a long time. That's a long time for the opponent to react and realize, oh, she whiffed crouching heavy kick, I get to just blow her up now. So, to recap the basics of frame data. Startup is how quickly the attack comes out. Active frames is how long the attack is able to make contact with the opponent. And recovery is how long you're committed to that attack after the actual attack itself has ended. Alright, that's going to be the basis that we're going to use to discuss the rest of frame data.